Uni, how are you doing?
How are you, my friend? Apologies for that.
That's
Obviously,
okay.
a couple of technical problems, not a problem.
Yeah, thank you so much for accepting our interview time, and your time is very important. Give us the time for interview. How are you doing today?
We're doing all right. It's very hot over in England at the moment, which is a bit unexpected.
The same thing in California today is 106 Fahrenheit, so it's hot. Mr. Antonio Stephen Malone. So should I call him Mr. Malone or Mr. Stephen?
Call me Anthony.
Okay, Mr. Anthony. Tell us about your experience, and we are so sorry what you went through in the last 9 months, and thank you so much for your service for Afghanistan and UK and United States. Tell us about yourself, how you survived in this 9 months, and what was your job, and what was your former job?
Okay, well, my full name, Anthony Stephen Malone. I am an author, special advisor, and humanitarian. I'm also a military veteran of the British Parachute Regiment, and I have over 22 years experience on and off traveling in Afghanistan. So I've been there quite a bit. So, but there's obviously a lot of other people out there who've spent a lot of time in Afghanistan as well. So my opinions are from what I have physically seen on the ground, not what I've read or I've been told. It is purely from my experiences. About 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I was an agent for the Central Intelligence Agency, and I was feeding them information while I was working in Afghanistan. And that was, my objective was to save the lives of Afghans, of Americans and British soldiers. So then I retired. 12 years later, like many of your viewers, I was watching the events unfold of 2021, which was the evacuation, which was quite chaotic.
So when you went to Afghanistan, when you decided to go Afghanistan, and how many lives you saved and during of that 9 months?
During the 9 months I was in there, I was actually able, with the help of a few other people, we were able to move to safety over 400 families, vulnerable men and women and children. We moved a lot of children as well.
Yeah, you mentioned about 12 years ago you worked in Afghanistan, and what do you learn from 12 years ago, and how was Afghanistan 12 years ago? Do we have a hope we will go in the right path or not?
It's a very fragile, and to answer that would be a very complex answer. I hope now that there is a government in Afghanistan that things can progress in time, in due course, and it would be nice to see peace in Afghanistan. Whether or not that can happen, it's purely up to the Afghan government and the people of Afghanistan. 12 years ago, Afghanistan was a very different place then. We had the Karzai government, we had the Ghani government, and there was a lot of corruption within that government, which is widely acknowledged now. There was also not a great deal of rule of law. There was law, but rule of law for your normal Afghans who live in Afghanistan. A lot of them felt, after many conversations in Afghanistan with a lot of these people, and I kept in touch the past 12 years with a lot of people on the ground. These are just normal, hardworking Afghans, not members of the military or the police, your normal public. And they were feeling like, because of the corruption in the Ghani government, no rule of law, they felt as if they didn't have a voice, for want of a better word. 12 years later, the Americans drew down and they left with the West. So the country was handed to the Taliban. So now the Taliban are in power.
So like we all so confused what happened 2021 and why Afghanistan got collapsed in the hand of Taliban. And our experience in the field, the experience which we have, we know all the truths, what's going on, what happened on that time. So what was the exact reason of Afghanistan collapse on 2021? Is it that South Asia intelligence services had a more influence in the Ghani government, or the Ghani government was disappointed from the West?
I think it was a combination of a lot of things. People point fingers, and it's very easy to speak about things as when they've already happened. Okay, I think it was a perfect storm of many factors: the corruption, the rule of law, the fact of everyone believed there was over 350,000 Afghan troops. Turns out there was maybe not even 17,000. So there's a big difference when you've got 350,000 men, the soldiers, and you find out you don't have that. So, and I think it was a perfect storm. I think the fact of the Western countries pulled out all their troops so quickly, that didn't have to happen. If they took their time and done a gradual withdrawal, it would not have been as chaotic as what we saw in 2021. The corruption within the former regime, not everybody, but there was some key people who were corrupt as well. That did not help. So it was a combination of many things. I don't think it was orchestrated. That's my opinion. I think it was a perfect storm of several factors coming together all at once that led to the Taliban taking Kabul as quickly as what they did.
So you spent 9 months in Afghanistan, you got a hostage by the Taliban too. So how was the situation? How you feel on that time? You had a hope you will be returned home back alive, or you will keep going on to save more lives when you are hostage?
It was a very difficult time. We were there for 9 months in Afghanistan. The first 3 months I was helping with the evacuation because there was an amnesty. The Taliban announced that there was an amnesty, and they still stand by that as well. So people could leave Afghanistan is what we were being told. Now, there was a rogue, and I will call it a rogue element within the Taliban that wanted to disrupt as many things as they could within the government itself. Myself and 5 other British nationals and 1 American were basically picked up without any hassle, no gunfight. We weren't arrested. We were just asked to be, and we were escorted to NDS headquarters, which we were not a problem. We were never handcuffed or anything. We were never charged. We went to NDS headquarters in Kabul, which is obviously, Afghan intelligence headquarters, to answer any questions. We had the correct paperwork, documentation, entry visas into Afghanistan. We had everything that we needed to say we are here to help. And well, 6 months later, we get released, taken to the airport and flown out of the country. But we were never charged with anything. My treatment while I was in there at times was harsh. It was challenging. Did I think there may be a time I may not get out of there alive? Honest answer is yes. Am I happy I got out alive? Obviously, yes. I wasn't able to help anybody while we were in there, but it was a very educational experience because we got to meet a lot of members of the Taliban at different levels, from the ground level, the media, all the way up to the the senior levels of the Taliban. And what struck me, and I was very surprised at this, there is a lot of infighting going on within the Taliban. They're not a cohesive government. There's a lot, it's always been, the Taliban has never been a cohesive organization. It's a name which is a lot of groupings come together under. The Taliban's like an umbrella organization. And what I noticed when I was in there, and I spoke to a lot of the different members of the Taliban, senior members, they were fractured, but they were fractured to the point, it reminded me more of what the Taliban was like back in 1999, 2000. So that was very interesting. And I think your viewers will find that fact very interesting as well.
So it means inside the Taliban, there's other groups are come together from the village and from the leaders, and they are all mujahideens. So during you're not going to ask, if it's a sensitive question, so you can say pass it. Have you faced during of 9 months investigation to any Taliban member who will be educated and fluently speak English and know everything about United States and UK? Did he ask you guys any question be related to be useful for Russia or India?
It was a very interesting when we were being interrogated. There was one main person who interrogated us, but there was obviously other senior members of the Taliban that came to speak to myself and the other people. They spoke, one of them spoke very good English, and he worked in foreign affairs, a very experienced older gentleman, very sharp, very switched on. And it was very interesting speaking to him. One of the person who interrogated us mainly was quite young, very inexperienced, spoke a little bit of English, and really not the person who should have been put in charge of interrogating us, because he wasn't asking us any real cohesive questions. Turns out he's got no experience, so he shouldn't have had that anyway. But as you know, it's all about family connections in Afghanistan. And if you've got the right family, you'll get a job there.
The terrorist groups, like we mentioned, personally, I mentioned to the media on August, in 6 months, Afghanistan will be turned a terrorist country in the world and will be very dangerous for West and the United States. What do you think, how many terrorist groups, including ISIS, Al-Qaeda, is any other terrorist groups are active now in Afghanistan?
I would say, in my personal opinion, with evidence that I've seen on the ground in Afghanistan, there is an extremist element there. Now, whether they are backed or supported by the government in Kabul, I have not seen any solid evidence of that. I have seen evidence of extremist groups fighting elements of the Taliban. So a lot of people, sometimes things are not as they appear. Afghanistan is a complicated place. Always have been, always will be. The fact that there is terrorist organizations or groups in Afghanistan is not a secret. Other people and other press agencies have reported on this. And I hope that Afghanistan does not become a safe haven for extremist groups in the future.
As we saw that all Mujahideen leaders, including the politicians, escaped from Afghanistan. They left behind Afghan people, even our own service members on duty on the field, our operators in the field. They escaped to the Turkey and Europe or Middle East. Can we trust them again to bring them on a peace table, or they are trying to keep fighting against Taliban and they are killing innocent people both sides? Is United States and United Kingdom or West countries can trust again, like Mujahideen leaders, including Marshal Dosto, Matamamad Noor, or Maqef, or Ghani, or other people? Should we trust them again? Because they are talking in the media and they're saying that we're going to take over Afghanistan again. If they took over Afghanistan again, what would be happen?
That is a very good question. And I think a lot of people are actually asking that at the moment. Should we trust former Mujahideen commanders? It is my opinion that if we want to break the circle of violence in Afghanistan, we have to break it, bringing the same people back to the table to do exactly the same thing that they did 2002. My opinion, it will not work. That's my opinion. Now, it won't work for a number of factors. Some of the main ones are, it's a different time. This is not 2002 now. Everything has changed. Everything has moved on. Yes, there is elements out there of the resistance that I am not connected to in any way. So I just want to make that very clear. I am also not pro-Taliban. I am pro-Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan. So I'm speaking from just my experience now. Some of the former Mujahideen, which I know a lot of these people personally, they have not been in Afghanistan for a long time, and they are out of touch with what is going on the ground, the reality of what is going on there. The people of Afghanistan do not need a civil war. They do not need a war in that country now. They need stability and they need people to help them. That's the people of Afghanistan. A conflict now or a major resistance push wouldn't achieve anything. Taking Kabul would be easy. It's what they do afterwards. They need to govern a country, whether it's the Taliban, who have gone from being an insurgency to now being a government in Kabul. Even if they were removed, and it is a big if as well, even if they were removed and a resistance government was put in on a temporary measure, that would not help the people of Afghanistan. Okay, so people have got to realize it's not just a case of getting the resistance, removing the Taliban. This has got to be an Afghan solution for an Afghan problem. The West has tried for 20 years to go into Afghanistan and they were not successful. They had to draw down and leave Afghanistan. A lot of the problems are still there. The corruption was a major part in all of this, okay? Is there going to be corruption in the new government in Kabul? I think there will be some corruption, but there will not be as much. And I think, and I know people might not get their head around this, we may need to talk to the Taliban because, and this is my question to Western governments, can you afford not to talk to the government in Kabul? Because if we don't talk to them, if we don't talk to them, it's not going to give them any incentive to fight the other terrorist organizations in Afghanistan, and it won't give them any incentive not to give anybody safe haven. If we open up a dialogue, we don't have to recognize the Taliban government, okay? But in my opinion, it will be very foolish not to sit down at a table now and talk to them, because this is an opportunity now. Instead of fighting each other, we can talk to each other. Now, this opportunity might not be there for that long. Western countries need to really think about this and think, can we afford not to talk to them at this point? We're not promising anything. And we should help the people of Afghanistan as well with maybe a little bit of aid and mentorship. Members of their government need mentorship. They've went from an insurgency to a government, okay? A lot of them don't have any experience.
So, as a former CIA agent and field operator and author, also a writer, on your perspective, what will be happen on 2023 in Afghanistan? On which path we are going on in 2023?
Right now, at this moment, Afghanistan is at a crossroads. Within 6 months, it could splinter into different parts of the country, and the country could be divided north, south, and east if a civil war pursues. Okay, that is if people do not help and talk to these people. Okay, now I hope that does not happen, and I hope it doesn't fall back to the tribal system of 1999, 2000. Okay, because that won't benefit anybody there. What I don't want to see is the country split in half, and you've got the hardliners from the Taliban in Kandahar, then you've got the more progressive thinking people in the north. Okay, Afghanistan needs to be an inclusive, united country. Breaking it up is not going to be the answer. I hope people or cooler heads will prevail, but the next 6 months in Afghanistan are very, very important right now.
As we see that all intelligence secret agencies have eyes on Ahmad Massoud. He is the one who can stand against Taliban, and even the Congress of the United States and West countries are trying to help him by different paths. Can we trust Ahmad Massoud? Can we trust NRF? Can they build Afghanistan in 2023?
I think Massoud is a figurehead, but people have got to remember this. Massoud Jr. is not his father, okay? He is his own man, and he can make his own decisions, and he's younger as well. So he might have different opinions on how to do things now in 2022, coming into 2023. I think it's important that Massoud Jr. surrounds himself with the right people, his advisors. This is absolutely critical, because I do believe that there is a place at the table for Massoud to talk to the Taliban. I know that 100% because I've spoken to members of the Taliban before I was a hostage, and senior members of the Taliban, including the Haqqani network, were willing to meet him, and they wanted to bring peace, and they wanted to bring him into the fold of the government. The Panjaris need to be included in any government and represented in Kabul.
As a former operator, can we call Afghanistan war Cold War? Is it a war between Russia, United Kingdom, United States, or China, or is it just as a national war, like a citizen war? What should we call Afghanistan war right now?
I wouldn't call Afghanistan a war at the moment. I would call it a warring nation, which is in transition. The transition period is the important part, from war to peace. It can't happen overnight. Do I think there is a new Cold War in Afghanistan? No, I do not think that. Anyone who is thinking that, they need to go and spend a little bit more time on the ground there. Is countries or are countries like China wanting to be involved in Afghanistan? Yes, because of the natural resources and mineral resources in the country. Every Western country in the world could be involved in Afghanistan. Britain, America, Germany, France, then you got Pakistan, Iran. It would be nice to see countries coming together and helping Afghanistan. Instead of trying to fight each other to get in there, why not come together? Because whatever happens in Afghanistan, it needs to benefit the people of Afghanistan, not the government or individuals, the people. So the mineral resources, they have a massive amount of natural minerals in Afghanistan. Afghanistan should be an independent, wealthy country. And my concern is Western countries or China come in to Afghanistan, strip it of its natural mineral resources, and the people and the locals do not get any benefit. That much money has been spent in Afghanistan. The past 20 years, Afghanistan should be self-sufficient. The problem with the past 20 years is a lot of that money, I think America spent in the region of $2 trillion in Afghanistan. Most of that money went out of Afghanistan. It's not there. I actually drove from the north of the country, the border to Uzbekistan, down to Kabul, 12 hours to drive that. And the roads in places was nearly impassable. That's a main road. After $2 trillion has been spent, you would expect the road and the infrastructure to be very good in Afghanistan. It's actually not.
You mentioned a very important point, all the money pulled out of Afghanistan. So most of the politicians and Mujahideen leaders had a construction company, logistic company. In 2015, I had assignment to go, voluntary assignment to go Mazar-e-Sharif and find out the truth. Each Mujahideen leader, how many construction logistic companies have. Just I find out one of the leaders had more than 25 construction company by different names and getting contracts from the PRTs and United States and Corps of Engineering. So who is behind that money? Is Mujahideen leaders involved? Are they involved to do a pull over the money to the countries?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and I've seen evidence, and you've seen evidence of this as well, a lot of people were using their positions, power, and influence for personal gain. That isn't just a statement. There's that much evidence out there to support that. Why would, I'm not going to name anyone here, but why would former Mujahideen commanders have over 20 companies in different names? Okay, that to me, something doesn't fit right on that one. And what happened to the money that these companies were paid? You'll find nearly all of it was siphoned off into offshore accounts outside of Afghanistan, like in Dubai.
Is any way the central agency, by the support of West secret agencies, to plug down that money and freeze that money and return it back to United States or Europe or return it back to the Afghanistan? Is any way, is any option we have?
I actually think, and I've spoken to a senior member of the Afghan government about this in Foreign Affairs. I think there should be an investigation into any government official in Afghanistan that was suspected of corruption. They should be investigated. If they are found to be clean, brilliant, publicly clean. If they are found to have siphoned off millions of dollars, some cases tens of millions of dollars, using their power and possession. That money should be frozen in the country it's in, whether it's Dubai, United Kingdom, or the US, and that money should be at some point returned to Afghanistan and returned to the people of Afghanistan. How that can be done at the moment, I do not know, because a lot of countries don't recognize Afghanistan or the government in Kabul at the moment. But the people who have stolen so much money from Afghanistan should be held accountable. There's other programs and there's other people who have spoken about this in great length. Everyone knows who these people are, what they're called, and they know where the money is. It's just going to be a question of who is going to have the balls to go after them, freeze the accounts. Like in the United Kingdom, we have the National Crime Agency. They can freeze accounts and issue an order, which is a unexplained wealth order. Something like that should be done to some of the former senior members of the Afghan government, and they can explain how they have acquired tens of millions of dollars in their private or secret bank accounts when they were only earning $20,000 a year. It doesn't take a genius to work out something there is not right. If they can explain it and it's all done through legitimate means, brilliant. We wish them the best. They've done well. If they have siphoned money off from the people of Afghanistan, that money needs to be frozen and that time needs to go back, whether it can be in aid, doesn't have to go back to the government in Kabul. It can be given to the United Nations. An example, they could use it to buy aid and food, take it into Afghanistan.
You mentioned about Afghanistan have trillions minerals dollar in Afghanistan. We have to invest to work on it. And also Afghanistan have uraniums, radioactive, like uncooked materials. So what do you think? Our Taliban's are going after radioactive material like uraniums in Afghanistan? Are they exporting that material to the Pakistan, Iran, or Russia?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen any evidence. I've read reports, people talk. A lot of what sometimes people talk about is not true. I haven't physically seen any evidence of this. And if there was, I think it would be an important point that the Western countries and the government in Kabul need to investigate it. But I personally have seen no evidence to support that.
So on 2023 and upcoming as 2024, up to 2025, here's the questions what everyone have, including American, Europe, and United Kingdom citizens, with Afghan citizens. So why the team created for 2025, new generation to take over government, and the Taliban's came, what will be happen? Because according of our intel reports from the field, we have report that the war will be happen on 2023, it will be continue on 2024, and 2025, the new youth generation will go took over the Afghanistan. How much you going to confirm that? Do you have a hope? Are the teams already built for 2025 to go Afghanistan, or is just talking of the people and politicians and outside?
I would be very careful about talking about things that politicians are talking about or they are supporting. Politicians outside of Afghanistan in a lot of countries have their own agenda and they will tell people what they want to hear at that moment in time. Do I think that there is a cohesive plan by Western governments on Afghanistan or for the next 2 or 3 years? No. I think if there was a cohesive plan, ask yourself this question: why was the evacuation complete and utter chaos? If there was a plan, the evacuation would have been part of that. I don't think there is an actual plan. I think people are just trying to speculate or scaremonger. There is people out there, and I've spoken to some of these so-called government advisors, and they would like to see war or a resistance, an armed resistance, really take hold in Afghanistan. That will benefit either the politicians with their companies or private individuals, because war makes people very rich at the detriment of the country and the people it happens to. So I would actually give a warning to politicians before any military action is taken in Afghanistan by anybody. They need to take a step back and think, is this beneficial for the people of Afghanistan? And is it beneficial for Western countries? The time for military action, they've tried it for 20 years. It never worked. 20 years of trying, okay? It isn't anyone's fault. It just didn't work out. Now it needs cooler heads, and people need to sit around the table with a pen, not an AK-47, and they need to start thinking of the future of their children, both in Afghanistan and in the West. We have an opportunity here to break the circle of violence and war in Afghanistan. 40 plus years that country has seen war, okay? I think it's time everyone gave the country a bit of a break. So let's see people sit down and talk instead of trying to kill each other.
As a field operator, on your perspective, we should have a roundtable for peace. But you mentioned about evacuation. What will be happen in the future for evacuation? Are they keep continuing evacuating the people? And the people who evacuated from Afghanistan, all of them are victims? All of them are people who are getting treated by the Taliban? Or also some bad people got evacuated from Afghanistan to Europe and United States?
This is a very sensitive subject. Now, in my opinion, some people who were evacuated shouldn't have qualified, but under the absolute chaos that happened, they managed to get themselves onto planes out of Afghanistan. Is there vulnerable people in Afghanistan? Yes. The evacuation helped to get out some good people, who, in my opinion, it would have been a bad idea if they had stayed in Afghanistan, okay? Now, there is an amnesty in Afghanistan by the Taliban, okay? Now, it's not perfect by any means, but there is an amnesty. People I know have walked through the airport, got onto a plane, and have left the country. These are Afghans, okay? So Afghans can leave. If people have done something bad in Afghanistan, like they have killed people, or they are wanted for war crimes, or they are wanted on charges of corruption, okay? I think it's a valid point that the government in Kabul might want to talk to them before they leave the country. And I know on a few occasions that has happened. People were taken from the airport, they were spoken to, they were then taken back to the airport, and they were put on a plane. I think there is a lot of scaremongering by people wanting to get out. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a risk there. There is, right? People are killed in Afghanistan every day. It happens, it's fact, all right? But it is not a 100% hostile environment, okay? It is dangerous, yes, but people should stop scaremongering, because they're not the ones who are in danger, but they put the people, the vulnerable families that are in danger, they put them more at risk, and it's harder to get them out of the country. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stephen. The last question. You wrote a book. I saw the books which you wrote, and also you speak in a lot of shows and to the public openly and to say what you want. As a field operator and former CIA and elite operator of Afghanistan, you spent like years in Afghanistan. What is your last message for all Afghan leaders, for all Afghan new generations, what they should do to bring peace in Afghanistan?
In my opinion, I think some of the older members of the government need to listen to some of the younger ones. It's a new generation now. This is 20 years has passed. 20 years is a long time. Technology has evolved. All the Taliban have telephones now. Okay, they use the internet on their telephones. They use their cameras. 20 years ago, that was unheard of. Okay, I also think that an inclusive government of all tribes represented is important, very important in Afghanistan. They cannot not include everyone. It has to be an inclusive government, and they need to get to the table now and start talking. I know there's elements in the Taliban that don't want that to happen for their own personal either gain or reasons, but the top leaders of the Taliban have the ability now to make history, pull the tribes together. The West can't get involved with this. This is an Afghan solution to an Afghan problem. The West shouldn't even be at the table when these meetings happen. It's got to be Afghans talking to Afghans, and they've got to realize they have one opportunity now. If they get this wrong, there will be civil war in Afghanistan within 6 months, and it will last for years. Okay, but they have an opportunity now to save tens of thousands of their own countrymen's lives, which is get to the table. Doesn't have to be in Afghanistan. It can be in Istanbul. It can be in Doha. There's other countries out there that will host this. Okay, everyone gets on the table, talks. They have their opinions. You know what Afghan culture's like. I know a little bit about Afghan culture. There'll be a lot of shouting. There'll be a lot of talking. Then it will calm down, and cooler heads will prevail. They need to think what is in the benefit of the country. The Taliban government have been handed a country here. Okay, now they can either, it can be a prosperous country, or it'll erupt into civil war again. It's up to them what they want to do at this time. I am hoping that the people I spoke to at great length while I was a hostage, that these people want to talk. They just don't know how to. They don't know how to broach. They've been fighting for so long. There's only a few of them who know how to pull all this together. What I experienced with the senior members of Foreign Affairs, they're very good, very sharp, all speak English as well, highly educated. These are the people who we need to get around the table. And I think Masood being at the table is a good thing. I think he has got to be there, because if it's a conclusive government of all tribal elements, it will work. They cannot exclude anybody. Has to be all tribes represented at the table. What has happened in the past? The chapter is closed. Move it along. The people have got an opportunity now, and that's what my message is.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anthony Stephen, elite operator and former CIA agent. At the last, do you have any message for the KauserTV viewers? Do you have any message for all of the world? this moment in 6 months, what should we do?
What we should do now is don't jump to any conclusions. Don't listen to propaganda. A lot of things on the internet, what are published, are not true. Unless you've seen it yourself or you have a reliable source, don't believe in it. The Western media as well needs to be more responsible. Okay? Stop promoting stories that are not true. Okay? Because after it's out there, the damage is done. Western leaders and the Taliban leadership in foreign affairs, they need to start getting around the table and talking to everybody. I know that's not going to be a politically correct thing to say with Western governments not wanting to recognize the Taliban. Get over it, okay? They don't have to recognize the Taliban government. Western leaders can still open a dialogue, talk to them. It helps. Little stepping stones. They're not going to cure this within a month or 6 months. But if they intervene now and everyone starts to talk, it can stop the civil war. And in my opinion, everyone should be making every effort possible to do that for the benefit of the people of Afghanistan.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony
Okay.
and Mariani. Thank you so much for your interview. And we will want to have you more to give us more information, because you open the windows, you open the eyes, what is going on in Afghanistan and what the West is doing in the media. So we will have you in the future shows too, and hope we can give more information to public to open their eyes and guide them to the right path. Thank you so much, Mr. Stephen.
Thank you so much for having me on your show as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.